The Berlinger? What promise? It's hard to say. And Patrick Mahoney. He found the stash before me? Do your founders often do the digging themselves? Oh, no, but he must have discovered it another way. Unless his murder had nothing to do with that. Just a place I have blood. The tablet fell hat. What is it? Curse. A curse? I mean, I hope so. It's a Syrian politics stuff too. Where is it? Ezekiel gave it to Leonard. Just from the other day. Exactly. Don't worry. You're right. What will you do? The phone is hiding. I'll see something.
Okay.
Hi, Ella. Good to see you.
Hey Petra, how you doing?
Well, very well. Yeah. And yourself?
It seems sunny where you are.
Yes, it is gorgeous weather. So all day long, I was biking today and had my big fat first ice cream for the year.
Oh, congratulations. Oh, when we were in Germany, we had so much ice cream.
Yeah. So you need to come. Well, but first of all, I have to come to Israel.
Yes, that's true. It's your turn next.
Yeah,
I agree.
my turn. It's my turn. So thanks a
Can
lot.
can everybody hear us okay? Anyone having any problems? I think most of you are still muted, so if you're trying to talk, you have to make sure to unmute yourself first. Hey, Mama. At muted, we can't hear you. You can unmute yourself.
I said hi to George.
Oh, good.
Sound is good.
Okay,
Good.
great.
Spouse black blood from birth. Let's our milk flow. We try for that.
Mm.
Yes, sir. Try it out. Lose it. Go to you. The thing purchases. Yes. It's a construction site. Everything's good. I have no idea. Every night. Try it. How can you hold those 5,000 years of history?
Sätta på ljudet.
Hoffman, ser du?
Okej, mamma. Nu hör vi dig, mamma. Alla hör dig.
Jättebra. Härligt.
Hör du oss?
Jag hör er så väl.
Och ser du alla eller ser du dig själv?
Jag ser flera stycken goda vänner.
Mamma säger 8-10 stycken.
Okay, don't be scared. It will be in English. This is just
It's just the chit chat.
chit chat.
Är det någon som hör mig?
Ja,
Ja.
Men jag syns inte, va? Det är Allan här.
Hej alla. Nej, vi ser dig inte. Vi kan höra dig, men snart kommer mormor att prata och då går det bra att vi bara ser henne.
Ja, men jag vet inte varför jag inte ser. Jaha, nu.
där är du.
Där är du.
Nu har jag satt på galleriview.
Titta på Allan.
Ja, titta. Hej på er.
Hej!
Vad underbart.
Oj, det är redan 15 participants. Det var väldigt... Om vi nu sätter galleriview, vad blir det då?
Ni kan prova morfar. Ni har några minuter att prova.
Ja. Då vill jag fråga följande. Om vi sätter speakers view och mormor talar, ser man mig också någonstans?
Man ser dig bredvid henne. Du kan se själv.
Jaha,
ser väl- du ser-
det är samma bild som speakers view. Okej.
Ja, vi ser samma som du ser.
Okej, vi ska se hur det ser ut. Speakers view står det nu.
Titta, Charlie är där också.
Vem talar nu?
Och Debbie.
Vi talar nu.
Oj, vad roligt.
Is this going to be in Swedish?
Of
It's
course.
not gonna be in Swedish, no.
Gudrun.
Är det okej för dig att sitta så?
Det är mycket bra. Sitter du bekvämt?
Ja.
Kommer du närmare mig?
Ja, visst.
Which also constantly reminded me is dependent on the
Men om jag trycker på speakers view borde ju bara mamma synas, va?
Nej, pappa, det är samma. Det är bara hur upplägget är på skärmen. Vi ser samma bild.
No.
Längst ner till vänster. Ja.
Nu är det speakers view. Och nu är det gallery view.
Det ändras bara hos dig pappa, inte hos oss.
Aha, bara hos mig. Okej.
Det påverkar inte någon annan.
Hur ska vi göra hos er för att bara mamma ska ses?
Du kan inte göra någonting, det gör var och en själv.
Okej.
Det kan du inte göra.
Jo, men vad ska jag trycka på? Gallery view eller speakers view?
Spelar ingen roll. De andra bestämmer själva var och en. Det kan inte du, det kan man bara bestämma för sig själv.
Okej, och om mamma vill se sig själv, vad ska jag skriva då?
Nu är det Salomo som tar.
Vill inte.
Speakers view när mamma ser.
Vill inte.
Ja.
Yeah. Guys, we're going to start in about 4 minutes. But if everyone who can wants to put on their camera, then I can take a screenshot and see everyone in it, and that will be cute. So feel free to turn on your cameras. And I'm gonna mute everybody because otherwise there's gonna be too much noise.
Gudrun.
Okay, we've got almost all the cameras on. Guys, smile, you're being photographed.
Charles.
Oh, there are a lot of us.
Ja, Allan. Vad säger du? Ja, mitt ljud är på. Men jag vet bara inte, när börjar det nu?
Det börjar om kanske 3 minuter.
Om 3 minuter, ja det är bra. Hej.
Lite drygt.
Thank you, Dai.
From dig. Alltså när man inte är teknisk så är det här jättesvårt.
Ja, men om du hör oss, då är det allting som behövs.
Jag hör dig.
Då går det bra, då behöver du inte röra någonting och det fungerar.
Nej, det är bra. Jag vet att jag är 93 år så jag är inte så där.
Ja, Mazal tov.
Tack.
Bra tid att börja.
Lovely.
Vem är det som håller i det hela? Är det dina?
Nej, jag kommer att presentera.
Är du värd för det hela?
Ja, jag tror att det är min dotter Ella som äger, alltså som är den officiella ägaren av mötet tekniskt sett. Men jag kommer att presentera.
Nomi, var är Nomi då?
Det är jag.
Det är du som är Nomi.
Du kan se när jag pratar så ser man en ram runt mitt foto.
Jag ser bara att det står Marie Frid och Charles och någonting. Och Robert. Det finns en som heter Robert. Hammar. Är det? Men vem är det jag ser som är stor i bild? Vem är det? Kan han inte presentera sig? Kan du presentera dig?
עכשיו הם שומעים אותי, אוקיי.
היי רבקה.
היי. כן, עכשיו אני רואה אותם ואני רואה בסדר, תודה.
מעולה, אז אנחנו נשתיק את כל המיקרופונים.
רבקה, nu kom det in en Rivka.
ביי.
Bye.
Hello everybody.
Hi, who just said that? I didn't.
Me.
Hi, Neil. I thought I heard Neil.
Hi, folks. Dave and Myra out here from Colorado.
Amazing.
Hi, Julia from Norfolk. Hi.
Amazing, amazing.
Hi, it's
Hi,
Di.
Lumi.
Di from California. Hello to my brother and sister-in-law.
After this. Was that Norfolk, Virginia?
No, Norfolk, England. UK.
Never heard of it.
Oh, well, can't help you. It's in the UK.
You're telling me.
Ima, you're gonna say when we're ready to start?
Yes, I have a couple of people who are having trouble getting in, so let me help them.
Okay. No problem. So we're just gonna wait for the people who are still having some technical trouble for a few more minutes.
Okay, wonderful. Welcome, everyone. This is absolutely amazing and moving to know that we're sitting here with friends from literally around the globe. This project is called Remembering in the Living Room, Zikaron BaSalon. And I think when they came up with the project, my mother has participated as a witness for a number of years. And until this year, remembering in the living room meant that you met in someone's living room. They invited an actual person and their friends and family to come hear the stories of the Holocaust. And I don't think the people behind the project imagined that we would now be sitting in 64 different living rooms around the globe. And it's quite a miracle. I'm extremely proud that my parents are with it enough and daring enough to say, okay, we'll do it with this new medium. Listening to the stories of the Holocaust is difficult, as we all know, but it's also very important to understand what actually happened. There's very little that we as later generations can actually understand, but we can gain some insights through listening to the stories. And if listening to the stories is difficult, then telling the stories is much more difficult. I'm very proud that my mother goes and talks at different frameworks and tells her story. And I'm particularly proud that she'll be sharing her story with all of you, friends from far and near tonight. So I'll hand the microphone over to my mother. She will talk for about 40 to 50 minutes and tell her story in short, of course. If you want to ask questions or make remarks, please use the chat function at the bottom of the screen and type your questions, and I will read them out at the end when my mother is done with what she'll be sharing with us tonight. Mamele, please.
Well, hello everybody, wherever you are. It's such an amazing feeling to know that many of you are very far away. I don't even know exactly all of you who is who. Most of you I have seen, and I'm happy to see you again. This is an unusual opportunity for you to meet one of the survivors because there are not many survivors left. there is quite a number, but not many are able or willing to tell their story. And by every day, the number of us is diminishing. And I'm happy that I do it now. I do it quite often at Yad Vashem, but I should have started many, many years ago, which I did not. A little bit about my background. My name is Ruth Berlinger, née Pijitz. I was born in the capital of Poland, in Warsaw, 1931. And I was a very lucky one because I was born to a couple of wonderful parents who themselves come from very different kind of Jewish families. My father comes from a Hasidic, very, very traditional and religious family with a lot of children, all of them well educated, traveling, reading books, knowing a lot about the world outside their home. And besides, they were very well off. I would say they were quite rich. On the other hand, my mother comes from a family of Bohemian people who were, many of them were musicians, they were secular and very poor. So as you understand, it was almost impossible for these two people to meet, and to marry would be out of question, but it happened. And they had a wonderful, long marriage in spite of what they went through during the war. I would like to show you some pictures of my family, please. Can you help me with the technical side? Thank you.
Coming right up. One more, do you want to say what we're looking at?
Well, this is the picture of my closest family on my father's side. It must have been in the middle of the 30s. And the older people in front of us is my grandmother and my grandfather. As you see, he's wearing a hat, as he most of the time did. And their children and spouses, and the small...
מי שנכנס עכשיו שישתיק את עצמו? Sorry, Mormor, go on.
What's happening?
Nothing, go on.
Nothing. All right, anyway, the two small girls on the pictures was myself, and again, but the little tiny one on the left is myself, and the other one is my cousin Hanka, with whom I talked today. She is in New York. And well, that's all I would like to show you. Yes, please. And this is my grandmother. As you see, a very elegant lady. She was a very strict person, not letting anyone be very intimate with her. But during the war in ghetto, she and I were sharing the same little room. And we became very close friends, and I was extremely proud of it. And my parents, as you see, I think this picture was taken quite soon after they got married, and they were a lovely, lovely couple all the way.
This is the last one we haven't seen yet.
Yes, and this is my closest family, my father, my mother, myself, and Mira, my sister. and it was taken in Stockholm. I think it must have been 46 or 47. I don't really remember. Quite after the war. Thank you. Yeah, so back to my memories. I would like to say that my childhood was a very exceptionally wonderful one because of my parents and my sister. And besides, I was allowed to have a lot of fantastic things at home. With things, I mean, I had a little zoo. I had different animals, like a dog and birds, an aquarium, snake, whatever, even mice. And well, it was wonderful of my parents to allow me to take care of these things. And the other thing which was very special was that there was music, live music in my home. My mother was pianist, and some members of her family were professional musicians. Her brother, for instance, and some of her cousins. And these people came over to our place and made chamber music. And I was always sitting in my corner listening. And this was something wonderful for me. And one thing which was trouble, which was not on the positive side, was that I didn't like to eat at all, and I was a very naughty child. My parents asked several doctors to come and examine me and say what was the reason. Among the doctors was one which I really loved, and his name was Dr. Janusz Korczak. I don't know if it's familiar to you, but he was then a very famous person, not only as a doctor, as an educator, a social worker, author of children's books. He made stories on the scene. He was everything, and well, I am very happy to say that I belong to the very, very few of his patients. He didn't take many private patients, but there were obviously some reason for it. And he was wonderful. And he told my parents when he examined me, I remember, that there is nothing wrong with this young lady. She's only very spoiled. And this was something my parents didn't like to hear, but that was the fact. And what Dr. Korczak said was, I can assure you that if there would be lack of food, this girl would be the first one to ask for something to eat. And this, he said, I think a year or year and a half before the war started, and he was very right. Sometimes in my home, I heard a word which was familiar to me because it was mentioned so many times, but I didn't know what it was. And this word was anti-Semitism. And the grown-ups discussed it very often, but of course, I was not present. But I remembered that my parents decided a couple of years before the war started that they should go for a visit to check to Palestine if this was the right time for us to move over and settle down in Palestine. So they did. I think it was 37 or so. I was 6, 7 years old. And they went to Palestine. They were away many weeks. They came back and were very enthusiastic, told us about many wonderful things and about meeting with my father's youngest brother, who left his very well-off home at the age of 16, and together with many young people from all over Europe, they went to Palestine to build up the country. So my parents were very enthusiastic, but they said, on the other hand, that the whole country was in a very primitive state. There were almost no towns, no roads, the communication was bad, the transportation was zero. Anyway, they saw many people working on making the whole situation better, but when they came back home to Warsaw, they said it will be too difficult for us, especially for my mother. Let's wait 1 or 2 years more and then we'll go. And that was a decision which they, of course, regretted very much all their life. I can tell you shortly, well, it will be too much, what happened to me when I was in the first grade. That was the only thing which happened to me, which showed me what this word anti-Semitism was. And that was very short after I started the first grade. I came to my classroom, opened my desk, and inside was a piece of paper, and I couldn't read very well by then. I took the paper, showed it at home to my parents, and they were desperate. They read it aloud and they said, it's like a kind of a bad poem. It says there are flowers here, there are trees over there, go back to Palestine, you bloody Jew. And my mother was very upset, both of them, of course. My mother went to the headmaster of the school. This was a non-Jewish school, and I was the only Jewish student in my class, and presented him this piece of paper and said, what shall we do about it? And he said, I don't know, it's not my responsibility. It must have been some nasty little child who did it. And obviously it was not, especially that we got to know that all the Jewish children in the school got the same message. That was bad enough, and my parents promised me that I will start the second class in a Jewish school, just to avoid this trouble. We knew, the grown-ups knew that the war would start anytime. It already started with Austria. I knew nothing about it, but on the 1st of September, just a few days before my birthday, which was very important to me, of course, the war was proclaimed. That was the first country with which the Germans started the war, and Warsaw was heavily bombed, and many people were killed, and houses were destroyed, but not our part of Warsaw. And already after 3 weeks, the Germans were in Warsaw. And then a new life, much worse than before, started. From now on, every day, there were posters on the street telling people what they were allowed to do, what they were forbidden to do, what kind of punishments would be given to people who did not obey, and so on and so on. And by that time, I was already a good reader. I saw immediately that there was something very ridiculous about these laws, and I asked my parents, do you see that there is a difference between the laws for Jews and for non-Jews? And even the very practical things like how to make a queue to get some rations of food. There was a difference too. And I asked my parents, tell me why is that? What have you done? Why is there a difference, and why are we the worst one? And I remember a kind of embarrassment among my grown-ups, my parents and my sister. They told me that I am too little, too silly, they really said so, not mature enough to understand. This was a big question, and they can't explain to me at all. And they say, wait and see when you will grow up a bit, and when you will be more clever, we promise to try to explain. And I must say, it's exactly 80 years ago I asked this question for the first time. I was 8 then, I am 88 now, and I've been asking this question, reading about it, discussing it, feeling it on my own body all these years, and I didn't come to any conclusion. There is no answer, because there is no answer. The answer is hate. That's all. We didn't really starve during this first year of occupation, but there were very strict laws, and we didn't live the usual, the life we were used to, and many things were taken away from us. For instance, I had to get rid of all my animals, my dogs and all the others, because there was a saying from the Germans that animals are much superior compared to the Jews. So Jews are not allowed to take care of animals. Jews were not any longer allowed to work together with non-Jewish people. So everybody was now out of work. And there were many restrictions and arresting people and threatening people, not only Jews, the others as well, but especially the Jews. And all this time we heard and saw that something new is going to happen to us, which is much worse than this terrible situation. And this new thing would be called ghetto. No one knew what ghetto was, but now we saw that quite a big part of Warsaw was surrounded by high walls with barbed wire on the top and some gates which were watched by German soldiers, and it looked very, very scary. And of course, no one wanted to go there, but the Germans told us again on the new posters that in a period of, I think, 2 weeks, I don't remember, every Jewish person in Warsaw will be transported from her apartment to ghetto, and every Jew would be allowed to take with him some basic things like a bed, some kitchen utensils, some clothes. Well, that was about all. Everything else would be confiscated by the Germans, and there would be no discussions about anything. And I remember the last day in my home where the Germans came and put some stamps and some ribbons saying Reich, Deutsches Reich. I don't really remember what it was saying, but it was saying that it's not ours anymore. It belongs to the Germans. And the worst thing for my father was to see that his beloved library, with books which he collected all his life, some special editions, some old books, some German, Yiddish, Russian, Polish, whatever books which he collected on his many trips in Poland, going for business. All his wonderful collection was not his anymore. And for my mother, I must tell you that I didn't tell the whole story of my mother's piano every time because it takes time, but I think it's so important that I want to tell it to you. My mother, as I said, was a pianist, and she had her piano, which she loved. She spent most of her time either playing piano or reading. I don't know what she was doing else because she was not a person with many lady friends or playing cards, or so she was very happy to be only with the family and with her piano. So the piano would be left, of course. And I remember as if it was a week ago that my mother, in her excellent German, started to beg these two German people who were there, please let me take the piano with me. I don't know how it happened, no one understood it ever, but the piano, they said, all right to the piano. And this was a very unusual and unlogical step. So we came with the most necessary things for our living and the piano to ghetto, together with, and this is nothing I knew at that time, I only knew it many, many years afterwards, together with 400,000 Jewish people, which is incredible. It's like quite a big town, moved over to a little part of a big town. I remember the first day in the new apartment. We were placed there together with my grandparents, whom you saw on the picture, and the majority of my father's family, his siblings, their spouses, and some of my small cousins. and a grown up, I mean, my cousin, my age. And we were very crowded, and the situation was awful and terrible for all of us, of course. But I think especially for the women, because most of them belonging to the middle class people, they have almost never been in their kitchen before. Very few of them knew how to make food or to go shopping or to do anything. And now many of them, the sisters-in-law, there, and they had very limited possibility to go shopping because everything was very little and very limited. But they had to prepare some food for this big family. And there were many other inconveniences, of course. Something which was not an inconvenience, it was a shock, a terrible shock to all of us, was to see that now we're closed in a place which was extremely crowded, very dirty, awfully dirty, and there were dead people lying on the street. And this was something which was new to all of us. It was a terrible shock. And the number of people who were either lying dead on the streets or very sick and alone and begging for something to eat. This number of these people grew by every day. Everything was getting worse all the time. We had terrible diseases like typhus, which was spread by small, awful animals, and it was very easy to get them because when we got out on the streets, it was very crowded, and you couldn't omit touching other people, and that was enough to get these things and a number of terrible diseases. We had, from the very start, very little to eat, but in the beginning there were many attempts by people who were able to arrange something, to organize something, and who were good in it. And to these people, my father and my sister belonged. They tried to make some kind of cultural world for all of us in ghetto. So there were children's choir, and one of the biggest, or perhaps the biggest one, was created by my father's friends and himself. And there were children who were now without parents and siblings and anyone to take care of them. They were collected on the streets by many of these wonderful people like my father and my sister and many, many others. And these children were put in a big building, which one now for some reason was empty. And these children had lost everything. And now the people helping got a lot of good and willing people to take care of them. There were nurses, there were doctors, there were teachers, there were musicians, all kind of people who took care of the kids, and the kids had a conductor who worked with them every day, and they were told that if they are doing well, there will be concert given by them, and so it happened. And I remember my father and my sister going to see them and coming back many, many times, very happy that they could achieve this happiness among these children. And this, for instance, went on for a couple of months, I think, perhaps a few months, until one day when my father and sister came back, they were crying and told us that the Germans emptied the whole building and took the children to death. And this was, there was a place in Warsaw Ghetto which was called Umschlagsplatz, and that was a place from which trains were going, taking people to different camps. And of course, no one wanted to go because we understood that there must be some reason for them to transport people to another place. And we understood that this camps would be still much worse than ghetto. Nobody wanted, but no one was asked if they wanted or not. So these children were already taken from Umschlagsplatz to this place. And in many different ways, Germans were working in a very well-organized, sophisticated way to reach their great plan. And to reach the plan, as we all know, was to kill all the Jews of Europe. They have been planning it, the Germans have been planning it since Hitler came to power. Of course, I didn't know about it then. Many of this kind of information I got when I was grown up, but I saw what was happening. The Germans tried not to have any revolution, any uprising in the ghetto, because they wanted to do everything according to their mind, to their plans, to their calculations, and they really did it in a genius way. So they didn't want to have people uprising, and that's why they very, very often called us with microphones to come down to the street immediately and stay in rows and listen. And there was always a German talking to us and explaining that there was no reason to be afraid, to be scared, because these camps were places where people would be taken care of. There were working unities, there were schools and kindergarten and hospitals, everything. It will be quite hard, but don't be scared. Everything will be fine, so don't make any objections. Go to this Umschlagsplatz. And well, we would like very much to believe, but we didn't, because we understood that something terrible was happening in these camps. But there was something which happened. There was a group of young people who were taken from the ghetto of Warsaw already some months before, together with their parents and their siblings and other family members. They were taken to one of the camps, and immediately their parents, their youngest siblings and others were killed, murdered. And these young people, they were between 18 and 25, they were kept for the time being because they were still healthy and strong and would perform a lot of work for the Germans to be exported to German Reich. And these fantastic young people decided that they must try to escape from this concentration camp, and they did. They were quite a big group of people. There were much less when they at last arrived at Warsaw Ghetto, and because they were shot, many of them were shot and died on the way back. But some of them succeeded in being smuggled into the ghetto, and then they spread in order to tell as many people as possible about the truth of what was happening in one of these concentration camps. And this, of course, changed immediately the doubts. Everybody knew now that it was true what the young people said, that the camps were death machines, death factories, and the only purpose was to kill as many people as possible, as soon as possible. While all this happened, there were still going on some attempts to do something good and human by the Jews themselves. For instance, from the beginning and some time after, all the children, most of the children, were attending some kind of class, school class. It was absolutely forbidden for Jewish people to get any education, to attend to any school. So this was very unofficial and risky. But I know that my parents sent me to several of these, because we moved all the time, several of these classes. And in the first one, I had the great joy of getting the teacher of geography of my sister from high school, where my sister was in high school. And this person, Dora, I remember her very well. She was excellent, and she taught us. I still knew quite a lot about the geography of Italy many years after, because she built mountains and towns and lakes, and everything was so natural and so beautiful. And she was a big, great educator. She was killed, of course, too. There were all the time selections in ghetto, which means that people had to gather always in a strict way. I mean, not in a group, but in numbers, four after four after four, and so on. It would enable the Germans to select people and send them to this Umschlagsplatz easier. So when they came, either they took everyone, or they took everyone, or they took only children and elderly people. It was up to their mood. And this created, of course, a terrible, terrible psychological and physical disaster in all of us. There were some especially terrible people, and I want to tell you about one among the German soldiers. His nickname, he was called Frankenstein, because he was a real monster. He was always in very good mood. He was walking around and singing to himself, and he was happy. He had only one hobby, and that was to kill a child. He did it spontaneously, and it obviously gave him a lot of joy and pleasure. And we knew that it would be terrible to meet with Frankenstein.
Itai.
That would be a very bad end of our life. But he happened to, or I happened to meet him outside one of the houses where we just moved into, and he was very happy. He stopped me and he said in some bad Polish, you go slowly back to your door. And he pulled up his revolver and pointed at me. And I was absolutely, of course, absolutely sure that that would be my last moment in my life. But for some unknown reason, he did not do it. He put back the revolver, and I heard from the neighbors who were witnessing this scene and told it to my parents. And he went away. He chose another little girl next door, and he shot her. So it's just by chance, just by coincidence, that we were saved. I was saved and my family were saved. It's just by chance. In one of the latest selections, we decided that my grandparents and the small kids wouldn't make it, and we hid them in the place where we lived together, where we all the time we were together. And only my parents and my sister and myself took part in this terrible selection, which has a name. I don't know it, but you can look it up, because that was the only one which took a whole day. We were told to stand on our knees and proceed slowly to the end of this road. We were not allowed to have anything to eat or drink with us, and it took a whole day, many hours. And the Germans were patrolling up and down and look at the people that everyone obeyed, or if anyone happened to die, he or she was taken out of this rows and thrown out. And the Germans even understood that one of the many of the backpacks on the backs of the parents, there was a little child there. And all the small children, kids who were in the backpacks, they were given something to sleep, and because otherwise they would cry and they would, of course, be discovered. But the Germans understood this too, and they went with their, I don't know how you call it, something you smash animals with if you are terrible, and they smashed on the backpacks, and the child started to shout and cry, and then the backpack was taken away and thrown out. Anyway, when we came to the end or to the front of this endless long selection, we knew that our chances would be extremely small, none, to be chosen to be able to still stay in ghetto, which means that one of the officers, or the one in charge, who looked at the 4 and 4 and 4 people, he should decide to the right, which would mean you can still stay a bit, or to the left, transport to Umschlagsplatz. But when we came to the end of this road, and my father and one of the officers looked at each other, they discovered that they were friends, they were personal friends. They knew each other from long before the war. They've been business friends, they've been traveling together, and this friend of father's have been visiting our home and having dinner with us, which I don't remember because I was never allowed to sit with the grown-ups. I mean, during a business dinner, of course. He was there several times, and my father was visiting him and his family in Hamburg. And now this man chose to show us, after 1 second, to the right. So he saved our life. Again, I mean, he too saved our life. Another thing which I can't explain, it was just by coincidence that we met this man, because there were many German people during this selection during that day, but he happened to be there when it was our turn to come to the front. And my father did his utmost to try to get in touch with him after the war, and through the Red Cross and other means, but it was unsuccessful. And only a long time after, we were told that the whole family of this man were killed. I mean, obviously by bombing in Hamburg. So this was a great, great sorrow of my parents to the rest of the time. When we came back to our place after this selection, my grandparents and all the others who were hidden were discovered and taken away and transported to one of the camps, and we never saw them again. And then my parents and my sister, because I had never anything to say, of course, I was too small and too silly, they discovered that we must immediately try to get out of ghetto, and we did. We bribed one of the people who were Germans who were watching one of the gates. And again, we were lucky because sometimes when people try to get out and they bribed a man, a soldier, he took the money, and when the people came, they were shot. But in this case, we were not. And we started another kind of life, which was hiding. And hiding was a terrible, terrible part of our life. We were in ghetto from the very, very beginning, from the first day of ghetto, to almost to the revolution, which means a couple of weeks before the ghetto uprising started. And my father and my sister came out during there was only place for two of us to come over to the Irish Catholic part of town. And we had to choose who it would be before we started, and they decided that it would be my mother and myself because there was only room for two of us. So we left the ghetto just before the uprising, and my father and my sister were there hiding in some terrible conditions, running for their life, seeing their friends being shot and killed all around. And they were, the two of them belonged to the one by last by one tracks where they were smuggled out with food from the ghetto of Warsaw. There was a lot of food in ghetto, which was prepared for the Germans who were working there. And now they were, of course, afraid that they would lose the food. So they started to transport from this terrible rest of the ghetto, which was already burning. They transported the food, meal, sugar, salt, whatever it was, out of ghetto and save it. And in one of these tracks, my father and my sister were hidden. How they come out, I still don't understand, but they did. So my mother and myself, who were quite sure that we would never see them again, we could meet them, and that was one of the most wonderful moments in all our life. So now we were hiding, and that was to an absolutely terrible situation, very different to how it was in ghetto, because now we were not able to behave like human beings. We were from now on not allowed to make any sound, to come near to a window, to be seen by neighbors, to lit a lamp or to flush a toilet, to do anything. So, and we had no idea how long this will be going on, how long the war would be going on. We had no idea about anything. But now we were again together, the four of us, and we were extremely, extremely thankful and happy. But we were hiding. We had no rights. We were crying all the time because of the parents, of my parents, of my other grandmother, who died of typhus in ghetto, about my auntie who was shot in ghetto, about all the others who just disappeared. So we had such a lot of terrible things to take care of, plus the everyday routines, which were try not to show anyone around us that we were existing. Very often we had to leave the place without, it was very short notice, and to run to another place. And not always we were together. And that was terrifying, because we didn't know if we would see each other again. And it was very bad. Once there was room for only one person, and I was alone. And that was almost impossible to stand. We went on like this, and people were very different. The people who gave us shelter, some were human and some were terrible. I just want to tell you about two very different kind of people who were giving us shelter. One was a policewoman who was a sadistic, terrible, cold person. And that was during a very long, cold winter. It was an old house. We had no mattresses or something to cover us during the night. We slept on the very, very, very cold floor with only our clothes on us, I mean, and above us, the extra clothes, and embracing each other to keep warmth, while this policewoman slept in her fantastic bed with so many pillows and so many covers and so many other things which we would love to have. And the most thing we thought of was to get something to read. And she didn't want to give us to read. She said, "You don't need to read." We asked even for old newspapers, anything, just to occupy our minds and to give us something. And this was a very long winter. My sister was getting very depressed, and I've never seen her, not in ghetto, and of course not when we were young. I've never seen her in such a state. She stopped. She didn't talk to us. She didn't react. She was completely closed in, and she was not my sister. And my mother worked with her every day, tried to get her back to life. She really worked all the time. And my father did something else to keep me alive. He asked this terrible woman, I think he bought some cardboard and some scissor and some flour to make glue and some color pencils. And he said to me that now we are going to do something different. We are going to build a doll's house. And I am the boss and you are the worker, but you are very clever in drawing. So you will make all this inner design and so on. And we are going to make a doll's house, and we are going to work very hard every day. So when we get up in the morning, I don't want to hear anything from you like, I am tired, I am hungry, I don't want to, I want to sleep. This is no excuse, all this is right, and you are hungry and you are tired, but this is a must, and we are going to do it. And he made a sketch of how the dollhouse would look like. And we worked very, very hard, week after week. And in the end, there was a beautiful doll's house with several rooms, with carpets, everything of paper, of course, carpets on the floor, with curtains, with wallpapers, with small people sitting on the chairs. It was beautiful, and it was fantastic because this house survived, and it came after the war to Tel Aviv. And by this, my father really kind of saved me from being disturbed or quite depressed. Then we came to the last place. There were many in between, several in between, but we came to a place which was completely different. When we entered, we saw hundreds and thousands of books on all the walls. And Helena, our landlady, a sweet and lovely person, she said, you can read whatever you want. Just put the books back on their place, but you can do whatever you wish. And we couldn't jump for joy because we were not allowed to jump, but we were crying of happiness. And during this period of time, I think none of us has ever been reading so intensely as we did then. And especially I, who was quite a new reader, I read non-stop from the morning to late in the evening, every day, intensely. And when the war was over, I think that I had been reading more books than other children in my age did, well, in several years. Well, we were at last liberated after hiding. I really don't remember. I think it was about about 2 years. And we had no idea, every time we had no idea how long more this would be going on. And at last, we came to this, well, quite a happy day when we were liberated. But we were by then so destroyed mentally and physically that we were not quite able to enjoy and to be happy. It took us a long time to recover. I just want to tell you some facts which I know, and that's that everyone who was keeping a Jew, a non-Jewish person, got paid. Everyone was paid. No one was paid by the Jew himself or herself. There were some underground organizations, both Jewish and non-Jewish, who were paying for this stay. But everybody did it for money, but some did it in a human way, and some did it like the policewoman did. But what is most important to remember is that everyone who was hiding, who was giving a shelter to a Jew, was risking his or her life. So everyone was really a hero. Some did it of willingness, some did it for money, but everyone who would be caught as the one who gave shelter would be executed immediately. Among the people who were hiding outside the ghetto, only between 5 to 7%, according to what we know now, survived. All the rest were discovered, and many of them were, when they were discovered, taken one by one to Gestapo, to the German police, or to Polish police, and for each one there was a payment of almost $1. So it was a very good business. Well, I know that I've been talking too long, as usual, and I really want very much to have your questions, because it's very important for me, and I'm sure it's quite important for you too, because if you don't, you will surely regret, and you will ask themselves, oh, I don't know, why didn't I ask? Yes, so what I want to add is that we were liberated by the Russians. It was not so easy, I won't tell you. We stayed another 3/4 of a year, I think, in Poland, outside Warsaw, which was completely demolished. There was not a sign of the part of the town where we lived. It was the center of the town. Not a sign of the street, nothing. Warsaw was completely destroyed. And we decided that we should go to a place, because now we were still wanting so very much to come to Palestine. Israel was still not existing. And we wanted to come to a place in Europe, not far away, like America or or any other place far away, and we have to try to come back mentally and physically, and to make some, perhaps my father could start, because now we had not one penny. So we chose to go to Sweden, and we came to Sweden in September 1945, and my sister left us because she really was she recovered quite quickly, and she wanted very much to come to Palestine, and she came to Palestine, to Israel, 48 and 49, their first child, because she married an Israeli man, was born, and the rest of us stayed. I was, of course, going to school, which I very much hated. I didn't know the language. I didn't know how to behave. I was a wild person, and I had very little contact with my mates. It took me a year to learn the language, and it took my parents many long visits to hospital, where they were treated for heart attacks, surgeries of different kinds. I was very much alone because my sister was not there anymore, and it was a very tough time. And when at last my parents decided that they are in a better shape, it took us quite many years, and my father was already making some small business. He had some small income. So they decided, now we are going to Israel. It was already Israel. And then I had to decide what to do, because a while before I met a very nice young man, and we liked each other a lot. And I had to decide whether to go together with my beloved parents and see my beloved sister and settle down in Israel, or to stay with a young man whom I didn't know, really. I just liked him. And after many weeks of the discussions, all of us, many tears, a lot of crying, a little bit of laughing, I decided that I will stay. And this young man is here at my side. His name is Shlomo, and we've been married now 67 years and a half. And we are still, I think, very close friends. So this was a very good decision. All right, please excuse me. I don't know why I can't stop talking. But now I'll finish, and I would be very happy to hear your questions, please. Thank you for coming, for listening.
Thank you.
Don't hear.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
First of all, thank you. I've heard you talk many times, sometimes at home, a bit of the story, some other stories, and after having heard it so many times, it's still so unfathomable and amazing and terrible. But you mentioned that when you came to Sweden, you were wild. You're still wild, and that's wonderful, and amazing and courageous and our hero. So thank you, Ima. There are a couple of questions, and if anyone else wants to ask a question, please write from the chat icon at the bottom of your screen, and I will read the questions so my mother can answer them. So George asks, how did you get from place to place without being discovered? How did you find the places, and why did the sadistic police officer let you stay with her?
All right. We couldn't manage, of course, if we didn't have a courier, do you call it so? In our case, it was a young woman who was taught already how to do it in ghetto, in the end of ghetto. Her name was Vanda, and she looked like a peasant girl. She was, yes, she was fantastic. She had the task of meeting with many different people who were on her list, which she couldn't write down. She memorized everything she knew. And she came to visit us, and she was the one who paid for our staying. And she gave us every time a list or a couple of possibilities to escape to. Next time there was something, we were in danger. So we owe her our life. And how?
Poliskvinnan, hur hon...
Yes.
How did you find places
Just a moment.
to hide?
How we found the next place?
Yes, how the places, the people who hid you, how did you find them?
Well, we had them on a list from Vanda.
Right, that was from the resistance movement.
Yes. And it's, vad frågade han mer?
Hur det kom sig att poliskvinnan som var så
Yes,
elak ändå behöll det.
Yes, that was half of the question. How come that this policewoman kept us? She did it without any doubt for money. I don't really know how much money each of these families or people got, but she loved things, and she loved to, she had her part of the apartment full of things, because she had such a position. She was a policewoman, that people bribed her and gave her things, but she had never enough. She loved money. So in her case, it was money. Yes.
Yeah. You've answered, there's a question from Uri about the same subject. A question from Nomi, I don't know if you know this. How many Jews were hiding in Warsaw outside the ghetto? How many Jews left the ghetto and were in hiding? Do you know?
No, I don't know. I know only that quite a big number of people who were told in the beginning of the war that they are going to be transferred to ghetto. They never did. They were hiding from the very beginning. And of course, quite a number fled the ghetto like we did in different times. But I'm sorry, I can't tell you, but there are quite exact numbers in both in Yad Vashem, or if you are calling from United States, you can go to any of the Washington or any other places who've got archives, and there is a very exact number for answer for this clever question.
A question from Barbara. There were so many survivors who never spoke about their wartime experiences with their children. Why do you think you were able to tell your children when others couldn't?
I don't know. I really don't. I can't say.
The grandchildren wanted you to.
Yes,
yeah.
You are right. I think this is thanks to our children and grandchildren. Because they were eager to know what happened and how it happened. But it's not only that, because I didn't say much until I was 70. So I've lost so many opportunities to talk and to give my testimony to many, many more people. I'm happy that I can do it now, but I can't tell you how. I think that I am quite a strong person, and I've got a very wonderful family who knew that it was quite necessary for me to get it off my chest. I didn't. I mean, you can't get it off your chest at all, altogether, but parts of it. So it's thanks to the children and grandchildren. Thank you.
The grandchildren are all with you on the screen tonight. They're waving.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, that's the best reward.
A question or remark from Petra. Me as a German, I'm not able to ask a question. I'm only grateful and honored to could have gotten the chance to listen to you. Thank you so much. A question.
I just want to thank the German person who asked the question. You are allowed to ask any questions, and I can just tell you that it's not your fault. I am talking to people from Germany. I am talking to non-Jewish people all the time, most of the time. And every time I talk to German people, I start telling them it's not your fault because you were not born and your parents were not born either. So don't put it off your chest, but do your best. You know what I mean. Not to allow it. I'm not talking about Holocaust. I'm talking about the prelude to Holocaust, about everything which started before Holocaust, because the world doesn't look very good now, and we must really put a stop to it before terrible things happen again. They have already happened. Thank you for not asking or asking the question.
A question from Sarah. What happened to Vanda?
Vanda, it was fantastic. Vanda survived, and she came to Israel right after the foundation of Israel. She was communist. She married another communist. They have a son. By the way, the doll's house was in her house. I don't know what happened to it afterwards. I was at Vanda's house several times, of course, to meet her, to see her before she passed away many years ago. But I know that the doll's house just disappeared, and I don't know when. If Vanda's son is listening to this, please let us know.
Not as far as I can see, but Vanda was a school teacher, right?
Yes.
In Israel for many years. She educated generations of children.
Right.
A comment from Annika. Thank you so much. Tack så mycket. Toda rabba, Ruth.
Thank you. Thank you.
From Suzanne. Dear Ruth, did any of your close relatives and friends survive? Did your mother make music after the war?
Well, yes. A number of my big family on both sides did survive. Not everybody was killed during the war. Some of the people were killed for instance, in Russia, flying from Poland to Russia, flying away from Germans and being killed in Russia.
Did your mother make music? Did Safta continue to make music?
Yes, Safta had a piano when my parents came to because my parents, I think I forgot to tell you that my parents, of course, went on Aliyah. It was not called go to Aliyah at that time. My parents came to Tel Aviv already in 1951, and quite soon after they bought some old piano. And my mother played sometimes, but something must have happened. She didn't have the brilliance, she didn't have the patience. She did play, but she played in Poland after the war, during the time before you left Sweden, left Poland for Sweden, then she played. But after the war, she kind of, it faded. I don't know why.
Yeah. A comment from Netta Frister. I just want to thank you, Ruth, for sharing your story with us all. It means so much, and you are so strong and brave to do it.
Thank you.
And a comment from Anders. Thank you very much for letting me listen to your story. Mish asks, what happened to the piano?
Oh, this was the story with the piano was completely crazy. In the beginning, I forgot to tell you, it was a fantastic invention to have the piano in the ghetto, and all kind of musicians and people with great experience and people who were just starting to learn came to our place to play, because obviously it was, I don't know if it was the only one, but one of the few pianos in ghetto. But of course we had to go from place to place in ghetto, and ghetto was becoming smaller and smaller, because that was a tactic of the Germans to concentrate people in order to be able to kill them in a better way or transport them away. So the piano was already after 1 year, the piano was gone.
Carmela and Anita both send their love. And then there's a question from Neil. If you would tell us how you and Papa met each other.
Well, would you like to say? Please, tell.
We were different groups in Sweden. I was called, I came to Sweden in 1932, 3 years old. So I was considered an old typical Swede. And then the survivors came with the white buses and in other ways to Sweden. And there was a decision that the young Swedes and the young newcomers, survivors, should meet to be good friends. And the community of Stockholm arranged a meeting for old Swedes and survivors who were young. And Ruth and I happened to sit next to each other. And obviously, we both felt that it shall not be our last meeting. So we decided to go to a coffee house afterwards. And yes, that's the way it started, through the Jewish community, because young people should be one common Jewish unit.
And the rest is history.
Right.
Love from Julia, and Tikva asks, may I ask how long you stayed in Sweden and how you managed to get your spirits back as you described it afterwards?
Well, this is technically a little difficult story because my parents and my sister, as I told you, were already in Israel since the very beginning of existence of Israel. And I was longing terribly to see all of them. And I came the first time alone, just in the beginning by a cargo ship, which took me 6.5 weeks to go back both ways. That was not like going by plane nowadays. And then we came together, Shlomo, Solomon, and myself, first with one child, then with 2 children, to visit my parents. And we came often to see them and to see Mira. And I was happy to see my uncle Srolek in Haifa and his family too. And well, we had a lot of people to see and to share memories with. Yeah.
Right. There are many more greetings on the chat, but no more questions as far as I can see. It's been wonderful again to see the two of you, to hear your story. Ella, would you unmute everyone so we can express our
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, the parents had a crazy time.
Okay, you can mute and unmute yourselves, but together it was a bit loud.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Ruth, Solomon. Hej, det här är Berlinger.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm leaving.
תודה רבה דודלי, נשיקות
Tack så
חמות.
mycket.
Tack.
Ruth, I know it was not easy for you to tell us this story, and I'm very grateful to you for having taken the time. And I hope you didn't suffer too much. Thank you very much, Ruth.
Calma, aquecer.
Hallå Ruth? Hallå?
Ella, can you unmute your Safta?
Working on it. Yes, unmuted. Mormor, du kan prata.
Ja, hej Ruth. Hej Ruth.
Hej, var är du? Kan du vinka?
Daraba.
Daraba. Thank you so much. It was unbelievable.
Wonderful.
Daraba, call to.
Laila Tov, everyone.
Laila Tov, Daraba.
Wonderful.
Wow.
Puss och kram, hej då!
Puss och kram. Tack så mycket för
Hi everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom bemet.
Tack så mycket.
Tack själv. Tack så mycket. Vad underbart. It was wonderful. I'm very, very happy. And look at my cousin. There, he disappeared. Hello. Hi, George.
Hi, George. Hi, Tim.
Hi, Tim. Hi. Hello, Anders. Wonderful. Oh, we are very, very, very happy to see all of you.
There's Avital.
Hej Ruth.
Netta. Hej, Netta.
Hej mormor.
Hej Salomo.
Hi, Jenny.
Salomo. Underbart att se er.
Hej Ruth och Salomo.
Hej.
Vad mycket folk. So many people, my goodness. Netta Wikström. Hej Netta. Sara. Sevi.
Sevi. Hi, Sevi.
Hi, Sevi. Underbart.
Hej, Jenny. Hi, Jenny. Louise.
Hej Ruth. Hej Ruth.
Hej.
Hej, det är Bodil.
Hej. Jag vet inte vad som händer.
Laila Tov.
We're very thankful.
Ruth, Shlomo, do you hear me? Hello? Ruth?
Annabelle, we can hear you.
Okay, Ruth and Shlomo, good to see you both looking so well.
It took us a long time to make you.
Yeah, I bet it did. Ruth, you have to know that at Stada this year, Sarah told your joke.
Oh, we also told your joke.
Sarah said at the appropriate time, now I have to tell Ruth's joke, so that we'd feel that we're sitting with all the Stals, Ruth and Shlomo. So you were with us in spirit. If not,
Please God, next year Mama can tell it to all of us.
Absolutely. I look forward to
Amen.
seeing you both when we can visit. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, and thank you, Nomi, Ella, for arranging this evening.
You have
Thank
been
you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And for the other friendship.
Hi, Susanne and Alan. Hey.
Hi.
Hi, Petra.
Hey.
Hey.
And Shlomo, it's Diana from USA. And I just wanted to say hello. I haven't seen you in a while. And hello to Ella and Avital, Jonathan, Netta. It's so nice to see you all.
You too.
Okay, Laila Tov, and Shabbat Shalom.
Laila Tov, Ella, I think you have to turn the meeting off.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye, thank you everyone.
Thank
Bye.
Stay wild. Stay wild.
Thank you.
More folk kvar. Okay, jag stänger. I'm turning it off. Thank you everybody. Bye
Bye bye.
Bye bye.